Hello, this is Ralph with RedArt Technologies. This is a tutorial for MACH3, which is a continuance from the tutorial for V-carve with the Scott paving stone. Alright, well let's get started. First we're going to, and you won't be able to see this, but we're going to go up here and click File, Load G-Code. We'll find our file named Scott and go ahead and open it. The first thing we're going to look at is the preview window up here. This is quote-unquote your last line of defense to make sure everything's right before you start engraving. One of the main things we're going to notice is this solid line here. The solid line represents where the bit is going to start and go to first. If for some reason you had done like a round object last time and you changed your datum start point to be in the center of the round paving stone, this is where you would notice that you did not change that back, so you definitely want to check. Everything looks good as far as that goes. You can manipulate this a little bit. You can use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out. If you want to get larger detail, you can zoom in. And then you can also move it around by pressing and holding the right mouse button. The left mouse button I never use in this preview because it does this, and that can be very confusing. So what I tell people is if you don't remember which mouse button to use, just keep in mind you can, whenever you click it, just move it just a little bit so you can see if you're doing the right one. So that looks good. Next we're going to go ahead and check some settings. We're going to press the Tab key on the keyboard, and that'll bring up this window here. Two things we really want to check is going to be jog mode, which we always want to leave it in continuous. Step is going to make it continuous. Will, when you press and hold the key, the gantry will just move smoothly. If you have it set to step and press the key, it'll just move a little, and then you have to keep stabbing the keyboard, and it's very annoying. So make sure your jog mode set to continuous. And then also our jog rate. Jog rate represents how fast it's going to move around when you're moving it manually with the keyboard or the remote. It does not affect anything while you're running the actual G-code. So if you're going to zero out your machine like on the edge of the paving stone, and you tap left and you tap right and it keeps going a little too far either way, you can go ahead and slow your jog rate down to get more precise, and that'll help you bunches. So alright, that's that. So we'll press the Tab key to go ahead and close that window. Next thing we're going to look at is our feed rate. Feed rate is how fast the gantry is going to move around when we're actually running the machine in the tool path. So if you are noticing that the bit is skipping over the top of the material and it's really not biting in, you'll go ahead and want to slow your feed rate down, and that'll give the bit more time to bite into the material. So you'll want to, and you can change this while the machine is running. That's the beauty of it. All right, next we're going to want to hit the reset button. You can see that it's flashing. So right now if I tried to move the machine or the gantry around, nothing would happen. So we'll go ahead and hit that. So now we're good to go. The keyboard and the remote is active now. If you press the arrow keys or use the remote, the gantry will move around. Alright, well what we need to do is we need to zero out our machine on the bottom left corner of the paving stone. As stated in the last tutorial, there is a 1/4 inch bevel all the way around the paving stone. We do not want to zero out on the corner of the bevel. That's not what we told the software. We want to zero it out right on the actual corner of the paving stone. Now most paving stones have a rounded corner, so trying to center that bit out on that rounded corner can be a real pain. So what I typically do for X, for example, is what we need to zero first. Instead of putting it on the corner of the stone, I'll move it up here a little bit, so then it's clearly over the edge of the stone, and just go ahead and eyeball it and move the gantry back and forth left or right until you're dead center of the bit. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and hit 0x and that'll zero out your X. Then you can move it over here to the bottom edge of the stone, get that lined up, and hit 0 Y. Now, next we need to zero the Z, which we do differently than X and Y. You're going to observe the stone and find the high spot. So wherever the high spot is, go ahead and move the bit over the high spot, and then grab yourself a piece of paper. I tend to use thin paper. You don't want to use like cardstock or anything like that, but in a pinch, if you don't have anything, you can use a business card. But go ahead and lay the piece of paper over the high spot on the stone, and using the 3 and 9 key, which is what moves your Z up and down on your keyboard or the remote, move it down until it clearly is touching the paper, and then take hold of the corner of the paper and start wiggling it, and tap the 9 key until you can move the paper, but it's still obviously touching the paper, and then go ahead and hit 0Z. At that point, you can hit go to 0, and the router will lift up and move down to the bottom left corner. All right, so after setting all that and making sure this is all correct and looks good, at that point we can go ahead and turn the router on and hit cycle start, and that will start your engraving. After the G-code has been ran all the way through, this window will go right back up here to the top. Your router will lift up, go over to Z, and drop back down. Now there's a feature called Safe Z, which is usually set at a 1/2 inch. So when it's done, you'll notice that the router is lifted up, and it would be displayed up here with these numbers. And the reason why the software does that is it figures that you're done with whatever material you were doing and you're going to pull it out. So it keeps it lifted up so you don't accidentally hit the bit. If you are happy and everything looks good, at this point you'd be done, but let's pretend like the helmet part right here wasn't engraved enough, like it was a low spot. You can go back into VCarve and create a new toolpath by just selecting this part of the helmet, and you'll go ahead and change your cut depth to, we were at 0.04, so we can go ahead and try like 0.06 and create a new toolpath just for that. That way we don't have to sit here and wait for it to run over all the other spots. And plus we don't want these other spots to be, you know, deeper than what the helmet would be engraved. So that's a way you can localize and go ahead and rerun. All right, well that concludes this tutorial. This is Ralph with RedArt signing out.